She thought she was going to die alone in the desert. But when a mysterious Apache chief appears out of nowhere, everything changes. What he does next will challenge everything she thought she knew about trust, justice, and love. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The Arizona desert stretched endlessly under the merciless sun of 1876, a vast expanse of sand, rock, and thorny vegetation that seemed to swallow everything in its path. The heat shimmered in waves above the cracked earth, distorting the horizon into a wavering mirage. In this unforgiving landscape, a lone figure stumbled forward, her legs trembling with exhaustion, her lips cracked and bleeding from dehydration. Rebecca Thornton was 24 years old, with long auburn hair now matted with dust and sweat, and green eyes that had once sparkled with determination, but now reflected only desperation and fear. Her calico dress, once a beautiful shade of blue, was torn and stained, hanging loosely on her slender frame. She had been beautiful once, striking even, with high cheekbones and a graceful bearing that turned heads in Denver. Now she looked like a ghost, pale and trembling, barely able to put one foot in front of the other. 3 days ago, she had trusted the wrong man. Marcus Dalton had seemed like a gentleman when he offered to escort her from Denver to Phoenix, where she planned to start a new life as a schoolteacher. He was handsome, charming, with slicked-back dark hair and a smile that promised safety and protection. Rebecca had been traveling alone after her father's death, and Marcus's offer seemed like providence. She had no way of knowing that behind his polished exterior lurked a cruel and calculating heart. The journey had started well enough. Marcus was attentive, telling stories of the frontier, painting pictures of the opportunities that awaited in Phoenix. But on the second day, everything changed. They had stopped to water the horses at a small creek when Marcus suddenly turned cold, his eyes hardening into chips of ice. "I'll be taking your money now, Miss Thornton," he had said, his hand resting on the revolver at his hip. Rebecca's heart had plummeted. She carried $300, her entire inheritance from her father, sewn into the lining of her traveling bag. It was everything she had in the world, the foundation upon which she planned to build her new life. "Please," she had begged, tears streaming down her face. "It's all I have. Without it, I have nothing." Marcus had laughed, a harsh sound that echoed across the desert. "That's your problem, not mine, sweetheart. Hand it over or I'll take it off your corpse." Trembling, Rebecca had given him the money, hoping that would be the end of it. But Marcus had other plans. "Can't have you running to the nearest town telling tales," he had said, grabbing her roughly by the arm. He had dragged her several miles deeper into the desert, far from any trail or water source, and then simply rode away, leaving her with nothing but the clothes on her back and a canteen that held perhaps 2 cups of water. Now, 3 days later, Rebecca was dying. She knew it with a certainty that was almost peaceful. The canteen had been empty since yesterday morning. Her tongue felt like leather in her mouth, and her vision blurred and doubled. Every breath burned in her chest, and her legs could barely support her weight. She had no idea which direction to walk, no sense of where safety might lie. The desert looked the same in every direction, an endless sea of sand and rock and death. She fell to her knees for what she knew would be the last time. The sand was scorching hot, burning through her dress, but she no longer had the strength to care. Tears tried to form in her eyes, but her body had no moisture left to spare. She thought of her father, of the small house in Denver where she had grown up, of all the dreams she had harbored for her future. All of it was ending here, in this God-forsaken wasteland, because she had trusted a man with kind eyes and a devil's heart. "I'm sorry, Papa," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I tried to be strong like you taught me." The world began to darken around the edges, and Rebecca felt herself falling forward into the sand. She waited for the darkness to take her, almost welcomed it. At least the dying would be over soon, and the suffering would end. But consciousness did not fade. Instead, she became aware of a presence nearby. Through her blurred vision, she saw a shadow fall across her, blocking out the brutal sun. Strong hands gripped her shoulders, turning her gently onto her back. Rebecca tried to focus her eyes, tried to see who had found her, but everything was shadows and light, nothing making sense. A voice spoke, deep and commanding in a language she did not understand. She felt herself being lifted, strong arms cradling her as easily as if she weighed nothing at all. Water touched her lips, blessed and cool, and she drank greedily, coughing and sputtering. "Slowly," the voice said, this time in accented English. "Drink slowly, or you will be sick." Rebecca forced herself to obey, taking small sips even though every fiber of her being screamed to gulp down the entire container. The water was the most wonderful thing she had ever tasted, bringing life back to her parched throat and cracked lips. As her vision began to clear, she finally saw the face of her rescuer, and her breath caught in her throat. He was Apache, she realized with a jolt of fear. She had heard stories of the Apache, tales of fierce warriors who showed no mercy to white settlers. But this man was not attacking her. Instead, he looked at her with eyes that held concern and something else, something that looked almost like recognition, though they had never met. He was perhaps 30 years old, tall and powerfully built, with broad shoulders and arms corded with muscle. His skin was bronzed by the sun, and his long black hair fell past his shoulders, held back from his face by a leather band. His features were strong and striking, with high cheekbones, a straight nose, and a mouth that looked unused to smiling, but was not cruel. He wore deerskin leggings and a vest, with a knife at his belt. But it was his eyes that captured Rebecca's attention, dark and intelligent, holding depths of wisdom and sadness that spoke of a man who had seen much and lost more. "Who are you?" Rebecca managed to whisper. The man studied her for a long moment before answering. "I am called Dakota, chief of my people, and you are far from where you should be, white woman. How did you come to be dying in the desert?" Rebecca's mind raced. She had been saved by an Apache chief of all people. The irony was not lost on her. Her own people, or at least one of them, had left her to die, while a man she had been taught to fear had given her water and life. "A man," she said, her voice gaining a bit of strength. "A white man. He robbed me and left me here to die." Something flickered in Dakota's dark eyes, an emotion Rebecca could not quite identify. Anger, perhaps, or disgust. "Your own people have no honor," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. He lifted her again, settling her more comfortably in his arms. "My camp is not far. You will come there, and we will decide what is to be done with you." Fear fluttered in Rebecca's chest, but exhaustion and dehydration had left her too weak to resist. Besides, what choice did she have? This man had saved her life when he could easily have left her to die. She would have to trust that his mercy would continue. As Dakota carried her across the desert, Rebecca drifted in and out of consciousness, aware of the steady rhythm of his stride, the strength in his arms, the sound of his breathing. Once she opened her eyes to find him looking down at her, his expression unreadable. Their eyes met, and Rebecca felt something pass between them, a connection she could not name or understand. Then darkness claimed her again, and she knew no more. Rebecca awoke to the sound of voices speaking in a language she did not understand, the words flowing like water over stones, melodic yet foreign. She opened her eyes slowly, her head pounding, her body aching as though she had been trampled by horses. Above her stretched a ceiling of tanned hide, supported by wooden poles. She was lying on soft furs, covered with a woven blanket that felt surprisingly comfortable against her skin. Memory flooded back in fragments. The desert, Marcus's betrayal, the certain approach of death, and then Dakota, the Apache chief who had saved her life when he had no reason to do so. Rebecca sat up carefully, her muscles protesting every movement. She was in some kind of dwelling, a structure she realized must be what the Apache called a wickiup. The interior was simple but not primitive, with carefully arranged possessions that spoke of a people who valued order and practicality. The hide covering the entrance was pulled aside, and a woman entered. She was perhaps 50 years old, with silver threading through her black hair, which she wore in 2 long braids. Her face was weathered but kind, with deep lines around her eyes that suggested a lifetime of both smiling and sorrow. She carried a bowl that steamed gently, filling the air with a savory aroma that made Rebecca's stomach clench with sudden, desperate hunger. "You are awake," the woman said in heavily accented English. "Good. You must eat now. Build strength." She settled beside Rebecca with surprising grace for her age, offering the bowl. Rebecca took it with trembling hands, finding it filled with a stew of meat and vegetables. She ate slowly at first, then more eagerly as her body remembered what it was to be nourished. The woman watched her with satisfied approval. "I am Nalin," the woman said, "mother of Chief Dakota. He brought you to us 3 days ago, more dead than alive. We were not certain you would wake. 3 days. Rebecca had been unconscious for 3 days. Thank you," she whispered, her voice still rough. "Thank you for helping me. I would have died out there." Nalin's expression grew somber. "Dakota has seen too much death. He said when he found you, lying in the sand, you reminded him of someone. His wife, who died 2 winters ago. She too had red in her hair, though she was of our people. Her name was Huyana, which means falling rain. She died bringing his son into the world, and the child died with her." Rebecca's heart clenched with sudden sympathy. She looked at the older woman with new understanding. "I'm so sorry. That must have been unbearable for him. For all of you." Nalin nodded slowly, her eyes distant with memory. "He has not been the same since. The joy went out of him. He leads our people because he must, because they need him. But his heart is like stone now. Perhaps that is why he saved you. Perhaps he hoped to bring back something of what he lost." The hide covering moved again, and Dakota himself entered. In the confined space of the Wickiup, he seemed even larger, his presence commanding and impossible to ignore. He wore the same deerskin clothing as before, but Rebecca noticed details she had missed in her delirium. The craftsmanship of his vest, decorated with intricate beadwork. The knife at his belt, its handle wrapped in leather worn smooth from use. The way he moved with the controlled power of a mountain lion, every gesture economical and purposeful. His dark eyes found Rebecca immediately, assessing her condition with a single sweeping glance. "You are better," he said. It was not a question. "Yes, thanks to you," Rebecca replied, setting down the empty bowl. "You saved my life, Chief Dakota. I don't know how to thank you properly." Dakota dismissed her gratitude with a slight movement of his hand. "You would do the same, I think, if you found someone dying. It is what people of honor do." The implied criticism of Marcus hung in the air between them. Nalin rose smoothly to her feet. "I will leave you to talk," she said, touching her son's arm briefly as she passed. The gesture was tender, speaking of deep affection between mother and son. Then Rebecca and Dakota were alone, regarding each other across the small space. The silence stretched, not uncomfortable exactly, but weighted with unspoken questions. "What will happen to me now?" Rebecca asked finally, voicing the fear that had been growing in her chest. "Will you let me go? Help me reach a town?" Dakota settled onto his heels in the fluid motion of someone accustomed to sitting without chairs. "That is what we must discuss," he said. "You cannot stay here. My people, we are at peace with the white settlers for now, but it is a fragile peace. Some among us do not trust whites with good reason. Your presence here could cause problems." Rebecca felt tears prick at her eyes, though she fought them back. She would not cry in front of this proud man who had already done so much for her. "I understand, but I have nothing. The man who abandoned me took everything I owned. I don't even know which direction to go to find help." Dakota's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Tell me about this man. What did he look like? What was his name?" Rebecca described Marcus in detail, watching as Dakota's expression grew darker with each word. When she finished, he was silent for a long moment, his hands clenched into fists on his knees. "I know this man," he said finally, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Marcus Dalton. He has been through our territory before, 3 times in the past year. Each time he brings trouble. He trades in whiskey and weapons, selling guns to renegades who would use them against both whites and Apache. He cares nothing for the destruction he causes, only for the money he makes." "You know him?" Rebecca's voice rose with surprise and a sudden, fierce hope. If Dakota knew Marcus, perhaps there was a way to bring him to justice, to recover what he had stolen. Dakota nodded grimly. "He is a scorpion in human form. Many have wanted to stop him, but he is clever, always moving, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. He has friends among the corrupt soldiers at the fort, men who warn him when the honest officers seek him. He looked at Rebecca with an intensity that made her breath catch. Your money. The $300 he stole. It was all you had? She nodded miserably. My inheritance from my father. I was going to use it to start a new life in Phoenix, to open a small school. Now I have nothing. I can't even afford a ticket on a stagecoach. Dakota was quiet for so long that Rebecca thought he would not speak again. When he did, his words shocked her to her core. I will help you get your money back, and I will help you reach Phoenix safely. But you must do something for me in return. Rebecca's heart pounded. What? What would you ask of me? The Apache chief leaned forward slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. Marcus Dalton will be at Fort Benson in 5 days. I have sources who tell me he plans to meet with a captain there, a corrupt man named Wyatt, who helps him avoid the law. I know the trails he will take to reach the fort. We will intercept him, and you will help me. Help you how? Rebecca asked, though part of her already knew what he would say. Dalton does not know that you live. He thinks you died in the desert as he intended. You will be our advantage. When we confront him, you will be there, alive and accusing. He will be caught off guard, confused. In that moment, we will take him. It was dangerous. Every instinct Rebecca had screamed that this plan could go terribly wrong. But what choice did she have? Without her money, she had no future. And more than that, the thought of Marcus escaping justice, of him doing to others what he had done to her, filled her with a burning anger she had never known before. I'll do it, she said firmly. I'll help you catch him. Something flickered in Dakota's eyes, an emotion Rebecca could not quite name. Respect, perhaps, or something warmer. You are braver than I expected, he said quietly. Most white women would be too afraid. Rebecca lifted her chin. I'm terrified, but I'm more angry than afraid. He left me to die like an animal. He deserves to face what he's done. Dakota nodded approvingly. We leave tomorrow at dawn. The journey will take us 3 days to reach the place where we will wait for him. Can you ride? Rebecca thought of the gentle mare her father had kept for her back in Denver. Yes, I can ride. The chief rose in one smooth motion. Then rest today. Eat. Regain your strength. My mother will bring you proper clothing for travel. The dress you wore is ruined beyond repair. He moved toward the entrance, then paused, looking back at her. Rebecca Thornton, he said, and she realized it was the first time he had spoken her name. You should know that this journey is dangerous. Dalton is not a man who will surrender easily. He will fight, and people may die. If you want to change your mind, now is the time. Rebecca met his gaze steadily. I won't change my mind. I want justice, and I want my life back. For the first time since she had met him, Dakota smiled. It transformed his face completely, softening the hard lines, bringing warmth to his dark eyes. You have the heart of a warrior, he said. Huyana would have liked you. Then he was gone, leaving Rebecca alone with her racing thoughts and the strange, fluttering sensation in her chest that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the unexpected connection she felt to this Apache chief who had saved her life. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. Nalin brought her doeskin pants and a tunic, soft and practical, far more suitable for riding than her ruined dress. Other women of the tribe came to see her, curious about the white woman their chief had rescued. Some regarded her with suspicion, but others were kind, offering shy smiles and words in Apache that Nalin translated. As evening fell, Rebecca sat outside the wickiup, watching the camp settle into nighttime routines. Children played among the dwellings, their laughter bright and clear. Men tended to weapons and horses. Women prepared food over cooking fires. It was so different from anything Rebecca had known, yet there was something beautiful about it, a sense of community and belonging that touched something deep inside her. Dakota appeared from the darkness like a shadow given form. He carried 2 bowls of food and settled beside her without asking permission, offering her one. They ate in companionable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the vast desert sky. Are you afraid? Dakota asked suddenly. Rebecca considered the question honestly. Yes, but I'm also excited, which is strange. A week ago, my biggest worry was whether the school board in Phoenix would approve my teaching methods. Now, I'm planning to help capture a dangerous criminal. It feels like I've stepped into a completely different life. Dakota's expression was thoughtful. Sometimes life changes us in ways we do not expect. 2 years ago, I thought my path was clear. I had a wife, we were expecting a child, and I believed the future was certain. Then, in one terrible night, everything I thought I knew was taken from me. I learned that nothing is certain, and we must be ready to walk whatever path opens before us. Rebecca felt bold enough to ask, "Do you regret saving me? Does it hurt because I remind you of her?" The chief was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough with emotion. "At first, yes. When I saw you in the sand, for a moment I thought somehow Huyana had returned to me. The disappointment when I realized you were a stranger was like losing her again. But now, I think perhaps you came into my life for a reason. Perhaps helping you will help me heal the wounds that have not closed." Their eyes met in the firelight, and Rebecca felt that same inexplicable connection she had sensed when he first found her. There was something between them, something neither could name, but both could feel. Dawn broke over the desert in shades of gold and crimson, painting the sky with colors so vivid they seemed unreal. Rebecca stood beside the horse Dakota had given her, a sturdy paint mare with intelligent eyes and a gentle disposition. She wore the doe-skin clothing Nalin had provided, her auburn hair braided back in a practical style that kept it from her face. The transformation was remarkable. She no longer looked like a proper schoolteacher from Denver. She looked like someone who belonged to this wild, beautiful land. Dakota approached leading his own horse, a magnificent black stallion that matched his owner's proud bearing. 4 other Apache warriors accompanied them, men Dakota trusted completely. They were his best scouts and fighters, each one lean and hard as the desert itself. They regarded Rebecca with cautious curiosity but said nothing, deferring to their chief's judgment in bringing her along. "Are you ready?" Dakota asked, his dark eyes searching her face for any sign of doubt or fear. Rebecca took a deep breath, feeling the morning air fill her lungs, tasting the promise of the day ahead. "I'm ready," she said firmly, and meant it. They rode out as the sun climbed higher, following trails that only Dakota and his warriors could see. To Rebecca, the desert looked the same in every direction, but her companions moved with absolute certainty, reading the land like white men read books. As they traveled, Dakota rode beside her and they talked. He told her about his people, their history, their struggles to maintain their way of life as more and more white settlers pushed into their territory. He spoke of the delicate balance they maintained, trying to live in peace while watching their hunting grounds shrink year by year. His voice carried both pride and sadness, the weight of a leader who knew he could not stop the future, but fought to guide his people through it as best he could. Rebecca, in turn, told him about her life in Denver, about her father who had been a teacher himself and had instilled in her a love of learning and books. She spoke of her dreams for the school in Phoenix, how she wanted to teach not just reading and arithmetic, but kindness and understanding, to help build a world where different people could live together in respect rather than fear. Dakota listened intently, and she saw something shift in his expression, a softening, as though her words touched something deep within him. On the second night, as they camped beneath a canopy of stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch, Dakota sat beside Rebecca at the fire. The other warriors had settled at a respectful distance, giving their chief privacy. The firelight played across Dakota's strong features, casting shadows that made him look both fierce and gentle. A contradiction that Rebecca was beginning to understand defined him completely. "Tomorrow we reach the place where we will wait for Dalton," Dakota said quietly. "When he comes, you must stay back until I signal you. He is dangerous, and I will not risk your life after working so hard to save it." Rebecca felt warmth spread through her chest at his words, at the care they implied. "I understand. But Dakota, what will we do when we catch him? You can't take him to the white man's law. They won't listen to you, especially not with corrupt officers like this Captain Wyatt involved." Dakota's jaw tightened. "I know. That is why we will take your money back and let you decide his fate. You are the one he wronged. You should be the one to choose what happens to him." The trust implicit in those words staggered Rebecca. He was giving her power over a man's life, trusting her judgment, her sense of justice. It was both terrifying and deeply moving. "I don't want him dead," she said slowly, working through her feelings. "I want him to face real justice. I want him stopped so he can't hurt anyone else." Dakota nodded thoughtfully. "There is a marshal in Tucson, a man named James Garrett. He is honest, one of the few white lawmen who cannot be bought. If we can get Dalton to him, with you as a witness and the evidence of your stolen money, perhaps justice can be done." It was a plan that made sense, that offered hope for a real solution. Rebecca felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. "Yes, let's do that." The third day dawned with a tension in the air that made Rebecca's skin prickle. They reached a narrow canyon where the trail Marcus would take funneled between high rock walls. It was the perfect place for an ambush, and Dakota positioned his warriors with the skill of a born tactician. Rebecca waited with him behind a large boulder that overlooked the trail, her heart pounding so hard she was certain he could hear it. "He will come soon," Dakota murmured, his eyes scanning the horizon. "My scout saw him this morning 2 hours behind us. He is alone, which is good. It will make this easier." Rebecca's mouth was dry with nervousness. She watched Dakota's profile, the strong line of his jaw, the concentration in his eyes, and felt something shift inside her. This man, who had every reason to hate her people for what they had done to his, had saved her life and was now risking his own to help her find justice. He was honorable and brave, strong yet gentle, and she realized with a jolt that she was falling in love with him. The realization should have shocked her, should have seemed impossible. They came from different worlds, spoke different languages, believed in different gods. But none of that seemed to matter when she looked at him. What mattered was the man he was, the goodness in his heart, the way he made her feel safe and valued and seen in a way no one ever had before. As if sensing her gaze, Dakota turned to look at her. Their eyes met, and Rebecca saw her own feelings reflected back at her. He felt it too, this impossible, powerful connection between them. His hand reached out, almost of its own accord, and touched her face gently, his calloused fingers incredibly soft against her cheek. "Rebecca," he whispered, and her name on his lips was like a prayer. "When this is over, when you have your money and your justice, what will you do?" The question hung between them, heavy with meaning. Rebecca knew what he was really asking. Would she leave? Would she go to Phoenix and her school and her carefully planned future, leaving him behind? Or would she choose something different, something unpredictable and wild and wonderful? Before she could answer, one of the warriors gave a low whistle. Marcus Dalton was coming. Rebecca's heart shifted from the sweetness of almost love to the bitter taste of anticipated confrontation. She peered around the boulder and saw him riding a chestnut horse, his hat pulled low against the sun. He looked exactly as she remembered, handsome and cruel, completely unaware that his past was about to catch up with him. Dakota's hand touched her shoulder, steadying her. "Remember, stay hidden until I call you." Everything happened quickly after that. Dakota and his warriors stepped out onto the trail, blocking Marcus's path. The white man pulled his horse up short, his hand going immediately to his gun. But he was surrounded, outmanned, and even he could see the futility of fighting. "Well now," Marcus said, his voice dripping false friendliness. "Chief Dakota, isn't it? We've crossed paths before. I don't recall having any quarrel with you or your people." Dakota's voice was cold as winter. "You have committed crimes, Marcus Dalton. You sell weapons to those who would use them for murder. You trade in whiskey that destroys families and communities. And you have committed a crime against someone under my protection." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just a trader, making an honest living." His hand inched toward his gun, but Dakota's warriors had their rifles trained on him, and he froze. "Rebecca Thornton," Dakota said clearly. "Do you recognize that name?" Rebecca saw Marcus's face go white, saw shock and fear flash across his features before he could mask them. "Never heard of her," he said, but his voice shook slightly. That was when Dakota nodded to Rebecca, and she stepped out from behind the boulder. Marcus's reaction was everything they could have hoped for. His jaw dropped, his eyes went wide with genuine terror, and all the color drained from his face. "No," he whispered. "You're dead. I left you. You couldn't have survived." Rebecca walked forward, and with each step she felt stronger, more powerful. She was not a victim anymore. She was a survivor, and she was about to claim her justice. Surprise, Marcus. The desert didn't kill me. Chief Dakota found me and saved my life. Now I'm here to take back what you stole and make sure you never hurt anyone else again. Marcus's shock gave way to anger. You were supposed to die. I made sure of it. How did you? He cut himself off, realizing he had just confessed. Dakota moved closer, his presence radiating controlled violence. Get off your horse, slowly. Marcus complied, his movements jerky with fear. One of the warriors searched his saddlebags and pulled out a leather pouch heavy with coins. He brought it to Rebecca, and when she opened it, she saw her money, all $300, exactly as Marcus had stolen it. Relief and triumph flooded through her in equal measure. You have your money back, Dakota said to Rebecca. Now, what justice do you want for this man? Marcus looked between them, his fear growing. You can't do this. I have friends, powerful friends. Captain Wyatt will hunt you down if anything happens to me. Dakota's expression was contemptuous. Captain Wyatt is also under investigation by the honest officers at the fort. Your protection is gone, Dalton. You are alone with the consequences of your actions. Rebecca stepped closer to Marcus, looking him directly in the eyes. You left me to die in the desert like I was nothing, like my life meant nothing. You took everything I had and felt no remorse. I should hate you enough to want you dead. She paused, seeing hope flicker in his eyes, then crushed it. But I won't become like you. Chief Dakota is taking you to Marshal Garrett in Tucson. You'll face trial for what you've done to me and for all your other crimes. That's real justice. The journey to Tucson took 4 days. They kept Marcus bound and under constant guard, and he alternated between threats, pleas, and sullen silence. Rebecca rode beside Dakota, and with each mile, she felt the future she had planned slipping away, replaced by something she had never imagined, but now could not deny she wanted. On the final night before they reached Tucson, Dakota and Rebecca walked away from the camp, finding a small rise where they could see the lights of the city in the distance. Tomorrow you will have your justice, Dakota said quietly. Tomorrow Marcus Dalton will face the law, and you will have your money and your freedom. You can go to Phoenix. You can start your school. You can have the life you planned. Rebecca looked at the distant lights, then back at Dakota's face, strong and beautiful in the moonlight. What if that's not what I want anymore? What if I want something different? Dakota's breath caught. What do you want, Rebecca? She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. I want to stay with you. I want to learn about your people, your ways. I could still teach, maybe teach Apache children alongside white children, help build understanding between our peoples. I know it won't be easy. I know some in your tribe won't accept me and my own people will call me a traitor. But I don't care. These past days with you have shown me what life could be. You've shown me what love could be. Dakota pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her with a tenderness that belied his warrior's strength. I thought my heart died with Huyana, he whispered against her hair. I thought I would never feel anything again. But you brought me back to life, Rebecca. You made me remember what it is to hope, to dream, to love. If you will stay with me, I will spend every day earning the gift of your presence. Their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home, like finding something neither had known they were searching for. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling, their faces bright with joy and possibility. The next morning, they delivered Marcus Dalton to Marshal Garrett, a stern-faced man with honest eyes who listened carefully to Rebecca's testimony and examined the evidence. This is enough to put him away for a long time, the marshal said with satisfaction. Thank you, Miss Thornton. And you too, Chief Dakota. It's good to know there are still people on both sides who believe in justice. As they left the marshal's office, Rebecca felt the weight of the past weeks lift from her shoulders. Marcus would face justice. She had her money back, and more importantly, she had found something infinitely more valuable than gold. She had found love, purpose, and a future she had never dared to imagine. Dakota took her hand as they walked through the streets of Tucson, not caring who saw or what they thought. Are you certain? He asked her one more time. Once we return to my people, once you choose this life, it will be difficult to go back. Rebecca squeezed his hand and smiled up at him with absolute certainty. I'm not going back. I'm going forward, with you. They purchased supplies for the journey home, including books that Rebecca could use to teach, and paper and pencils for the children. As they prepared to leave Tucson, Nalin appeared, having followed them to the city with 3 other women from the tribe. The older woman's eyes were bright with tears as she embraced Rebecca. "I knew," she said simply. "I knew when I saw how my son looked at you. Welcome to our family, daughter of my heart." The return journey was filled with laughter and planning and stolen kisses when they thought no one was looking, though Nalin's knowing smile suggested they were fooling no one. When they finally rode back into the Apache camp, the people gathered to greet them, curious about the white woman who had chosen to stay. Dakota addressed his people with pride and love, his arm around Rebecca's shoulders. "This is Rebecca, who will be my wife if she will have me, and who will teach our children the wisdom of both our peoples. She has courage and honor, and I ask you to welcome her as one of us." There was silence for a moment. Then one of the elders stepped forward, a woman whose face was lined with age and wisdom. She studied Rebecca carefully, then nodded slowly. "She has kind eyes and a strong spirit, and she has brought joy back to our chief's heart. We will welcome her." A cheer went up from the assembled tribe, and Rebecca felt tears of happiness stream down her face. This was home now. These were her people, and Dakota was her future. That night, under the vast canopy of desert stars, Dakota and Rebecca sat together outside his wickiup, which would soon be theirs together. "I never imagined my life would lead here," Rebecca said softly, leaning against his strong shoulder. "A month ago, I thought I knew exactly what my future held. Now everything has changed, and I couldn't be happier about it." Dakota kissed the top of her head gently. "You were brought to me by fate, or the spirits or whatever force guides our lives. You were dying in the desert, and I was dying in my grief. We saved each other, Rebecca. We gave each other a reason to live again." She turned to look up at him, her green eyes meeting his dark ones, and saw their whole future reflected there. They would face challenges, certainly. Their union would be questioned by both Apache and white communities, but they would face it all together, with love as their foundation and hope as their guide. "I love you, Dakota," she whispered. "I love you, Rebecca," he replied, "now and always." As they kissed beneath the stars, the desert wind whispered around them, carrying with it the promise of tomorrow and all the tomorrows to come. Marcus Dalton had tried to end Rebecca's story in that desert, leaving her to die alone and forgotten. Instead, he had inadvertently led her to her true destiny, to a love more powerful than she had ever dreamed possible, and to a life of purpose and meaning. The desert that had nearly claimed her life had instead given her a new one, better and brighter than anything she could have planned. And as Dakota held her close, Rebecca knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, with exactly who she was meant to be with, ready to face whatever adventures their future together might hold.